Okay, I want to compare three functions with you. First one is 2 to the x, that's an exponential function. 2 times x, that's a linear function. And 2x squared, that's a quadratic function. So let's see what happens when x is equal to 1 for each of these functions. So when x is equal to 1, here we have 2 to the first power, which is 2, right? For the linear function here, we have 2 times 1, which is also 2. And when x is equal to 1 in 2x squared, that's going to be 2 times 1 squared, which is 2. So when x is equal to 1, each of these functions equal 2. Let's take a look at what happens when x equals 2. So here we have 2 squared, which is 4. Here we have 2 times 2, which is also 4. And for the quadratic function, we have 2 times 2 squared. Well, that's 2 times 4, which is 8. So when x equals 2, the quadratic function has a greater value than the other two. Let's continue and try to imagine what's going to happen as we get larger and larger values of x. Which one is going to start taking on the greater values? Let's keep going. 2 to the third, right? If x is 3, that's 2 to the third. Well, that's 2 times 2 times 2, which is 8. What about for the linear function? Well, that's going to be 2 times 3, which is 6. And for the quadratic function, we're going to have 2 times 3 squared. Now 3 squared is 9, and 2 times 9 is 18. So it's going to be 18. So it looks, so far, it looks like the quadratic function always has the greater value. Let's continue. What about when x equals 4? So we'd have 2 to the 4 power. That's 16. Okay, that's 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And here we have 2 times 4, which is 8. And here we have 2 times 4 squared, which is 2 times 16, which is 32. Okay, let's keep going. So far, the quadratic function always has the greater value. Let's go on to x is equal to 5. Okay, so that would be 2 to the 5th power. That's 32. The linear function is going to be 2 times 5, so this one looks like it almost always has the smallest value. 2 times 5 is 10. And here we'd have 2 times 5 squared, which is 2 times 25, which is 50. Okay, let's just do a couple more here. So let's do x equals 6. What happens when x equals 6? Well, this would be 2 to the 6th power. Now 2 to the 6th is 64. So that number is getting pretty big. And 2 times 6 is 12. We can pretty much already tell that the linear function is going to have the lowest value. And then 2 times 6 squared, well, that's 2 times 36, which is 72. When x equals 7, we get 2 to the 7th, which is 128, sorry, drew a blank there. And this would be 2 times 7, which is 14. And here we'd have 2 times 7 squared, which is 2 times 49, which is 98. So now notice that the exponential function now has the greatest value. Let's continue. when x equals 8, when x equals 8, you get 2 to the 8th. Okay, and that's going to be 256. The linear function is going to be 2 times 8, which is 16. And this is going to be 2 times 8 squared, which is 64, which is 128. Okay, so what happens is the numbers get greater and greater and greater. The exponential function always is the greatest value. It may not happen right away, but it will happen. So when x is equal to 9, we have 2 to the 9th. And that comes out to be 512. Oops. Okay, the linear function is still at a really low value. That's 2 times 9, which is 18. And here we have 2 times 9 squared, which is 81. So that's 162. So what happens is the exponential function, whenever you're comparing an exponential function with a linear function or a quadratic function, the exponential function in the long run for large values of x will always exceed the other values. That's it.